Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
So I apologize to you guys because you're hearing this a week later and you're like, I'm done with that conversation in my brain, but we just talked about it. So I have something I want to talk about. Speaking of eye exams and all of that whole process.
Uh-huh.
So, like I said, I got frustrated when I was ordering my contacts and they were like, oh, your prescription's expired. I'm like, fuck, now I gotta get a new prescription. But I'm like, I'm about to drop like $600 on contacts for this year. Why do you care what prescription I get? Why is it a thing that you have to have a prescription to buy contacts and glasses? Why can't you just say, this is the number I want to get? And if that doesn't work for
Yeah.
you, that's on you. That's your problem. Why is that regulated? Why is that mandated? You know?
I mean, you could say the same thing about birth control.
True. Well, birth
Because I,
control, but I feel like they're like not consequences, side effects to birth control. So it's like, oh, you want to be monitored by a doctor to make sure that,
yeah.
whatever you're taking with like blood clots and if you have a history of this or history, it's like if you get the wrong prescription, like you're just not going to be able to see. Like,
Yeah, but that can like severely damage your eyes too. Like if you go years wearing like the wrong contacts.
I guess.
And also to try and like if you have like early onset eye disease. Is that a thing? Did I just make that up and sound official? But you know what I mean? Like if you have like an
Yeah,
eye
like there are eye
something.
problems. Like I get the point of like eye exams and I understand like why you need to, but it's like
Because none of us would make eye exams if we didn't have to get our prescriptions.
but people that aren't
Do you
blind
know the
don't have to
last
get eye
time
exams. People
my
that
dad hasn't gotten an eye exam in forever? The doctor told
exactly.
his doctor was like, you need to go get one.
Like people that don't wear glasses and contacts, like they never have to go to the eye doctor. They don't have, which don't get me
Yeah.
started on how much you have to fucking pay to be able to see. When it's not my fault that I can't see. Okay, I didn't ask for this. But I don't know, it's just such a weird thing that I'm just like, it's so frustrating when I've had the same prescription for like years and years and years, and I'm like, this is
Yeah.
what I need. I know this is what I need. I don't need to like I live with these eyeballs every day. I know that they have not changed. I don't need to read your letters on the screen to determine that it has not changed because I read all day, every day, and I would know if it changed.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't
I
mind the eye doctor. That's not one I mind too much.
it's just the like scheduling of and going to one more
hmm
appointment. That's just like, okay, then I have to like arrange this
And
and
now,
then
because like insurance will cover some of your contacts, I'm always like, yeah, you order my contacts and you figure out those deductions because I don't understand it.
see mine like just covers like $125 a year flat rate and then
Yeah,
that's
because
it.
Kevin wears daily too. So
Yeah.
his is only 3 months, but mine is 6 months covered.
That's nice.
So, because I don't know, I don't wear dailies.
Yeah, I love the dailies. I can't go back. And I know it would be cheaper, but I'm too bougie in my dailies now. I can't do it. You get a little bit of
Yeah,
mascara on it.
Kevin.
That's fine. I got a new pair tomorrow. It's all good. I ripped it. It's fine. I get a new pair tomorrow.
Kevin has to wear dailies because he almost lost his eye when he was in
Yeah,
high school.
that'll do it.
And he also, because I said again, continuation of just our conversation we just had, basically.
Yep. Sorry,
We went
guys.
to the beach and I don't know what happened, but it looks like a sty, but it doesn't
hmm
hurt, which is there's apparently another thing it can be, and I can't pronounce it.
hmm
But it's like on his eye, and he's like, I think this is the bad eye. And
Oh
he's
no.
like freaking out. And he was like, is
Oh
my eyeball
gosh.
red? And I'm like,
Oh
no,
no.
your eyeball is red. But it was weird. It was like a pimple on his like water line.
Oh, that sounds
So it
painful.
was just like popping up, and he's like, it doesn't hurt, it's just annoying.
Yeah, I can
Because it's
definitely
like, and
see
it was like
that.
swollen. It's looking better today.
That's
So hopefully
good.
it'll go away. But he's been wearing glasses and he's been
Yeah.
very unhappy about it. So
I feel that. I also do not like wearing my glasses. That was when I was complaining about the price of contacts last week. So I've had them sitting in my cart for a week because when I first put it in there and I was like 700 something dollars, I was like, I don't want to do that. So I just
mhm.
waited a week like it was going to change anything. But I just, and Andrew's like, oh, you just should wear your glasses. And I'm like, no. Like, I don't, he's
Yeah.
like, oh, but they're cute. And I'm like, I don't care what they look like. I just don't like them on my face. I don't like that I don't have peripheral vision because I can't, and then trying to work out and then you're sweating and they're falling off your face. No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for this long-winded conversation about
Tell us about your
eyes.
eyeballs.
Yes. Let us know if you feel strongly about your annual eye exams. Or if you're like me and you're just like, please just give me the fucking prescription so I can see and move on with my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just
Anyway,
so lazy. I'm like, if I go to this appointment, they'll just do everything for me, and I just one swipe of a card, I'll see you in a year.
you're like, great, done.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as we mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned it last week. This is part two of last week's episode. So if you've not listened to that one yet, please go back. In which case, you're probably also like, why are you just starting out talking about contacts and glasses and everything? But this is part two. We left you all with Morgan and Anissa and Payton are in the woods. They've kind of cornered Payton during a game of hide and seek, and they have stabbed her many, many times. Eventually basically got tired of the screaming and they were like, okay, just please stop. And then now they have left her alone in the woods as she is bleeding out from these 19 wounds. So at 9:53 a.m., cyclist Greg Steinberg turned on Big Bend Road on his way home from running a 5K race that morning, and he saw a girl with brown hair lying on the edge of the trail. She had somehow managed to drag herself out of the woods and onto the trail so that she would be found. Again, she was stabbed 19 times, this 12-year-old girl,
Yeah.
and she's able to get out of the woods to this trail so someone can find her. She had on a blue and white striped slide-on sandal that was hanging from one foot. She told him, I've been stabbed multiple times. Please help me. So Greg Steinberg called 911 and reported that a 12-year-old girl had been stabbed. So because this area was not used to crime like this, the officers who initially heard the call thought that like someone was mistaken and like, oh, like a girl must have like cut herself in the woods and like she came out and he was like, oh my gosh, she's
Hmm.
been stabbed. Like they didn't think that that was actually what had happened. So officers and EMTs were dispatched to the scene and they requested a female officer to meet them at the hospital to photograph Payton's stab wounds. She was still conscious but was unable to answer any complex questions at this point. Her injuries were life-threatening and she needed surgery right away. Payton was able to tell them that her best friend Morgan did this to her, but then she was only able to answer by like shaking her head yes and no after that. So the officers are trying to question her like in this way to learn as much as they can. And they learned that Payton was in the woods with another girl and that she didn't want to be there. They didn't know if Payton would make it through surgery. So they're trying to get as much information from her as they can, like in case she dies. And now this is a homicide case. So they're trying to just gather everything they
Hmm.
can about who did this and what happened. So the officers called Payton's mom and asked if she had been at a sleepover the night before, and then told her that her daughter had been stabbed and she was in the hospital. Her mom, Stacy, arrived just before she went into surgery and heard the nurses counting her stab wounds. Like she kind of like walked up on that and like heard them counting and was like, I don't know why they're counting. And then she realized they were counting the number of times that she had been stabbed. And as we mentioned before, Payton was stabbed 19 times.
That is just
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah. So officers went to Morgan's condo and searched their house, and they asked her parents where Morgan was, and they told her she was at the park with her friends. So they told her that one girl from the slumber party had been hurt and the other two were missing, but they didn't provide like names or any other details. So they didn't say that like they hurt her or which girl was hurt or anything like that. They just said one girl was hurt and the other two were missing. So they have no idea what's going on. So officers then went to Anissa's condo, but no one was home because they were moving her older siblings into her house that day. Um, because remember, her half siblings' mom had passed away recently. So her dad is busy, like no one's at the condo because they're moving the siblings into his house that day.
Hmm.
So they called her dad's cell phone at 11:15 a.m. and he called Anissa's mom and asked her to go to the condo because he was so far away. So she found Anissa's cell phone and the goodbye note in her phone that sounded like it could have been a suicide note. So the note read, I want everything I own to go to my parents. My final wish to those who care, do not grieve my absence, but remember me for who I was. I love and cherish you all and wouldn't do you harm. Best wishes to all that know me personally. Do not miss me. So yeah, it kind of sounds like a suicide note.
It definitely does.
Yeah. So physical descriptions of Morgan and Anissa were put out over the police radio. So the Waukesha Police Department dispatched canines to where Payton was found, and Morgan and Anissa could hear the sirens, and they started walking like hunched over, hoping that no one would see them. And then they stopped and washed some of Payton's blood off of them in a stream. So they also used the same knife that they used to stab Payton to draw the Slenderman symbol into a tree trunk. And Morgan also like recited some poem in an attempt to summon him. So they believed that Slenderman came to them then and told them to continue on to the national forest. So they keep going that way. The girls were thirsty, so they stopped at a Walmart and refilled their water bottles. And Morgan took her black lace gloves off to wash her hands in the bathroom and didn't realize until later that she had left them there. A nearby furniture store called Steinhafels. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced that, Wisconsin. So they were handing out snacks and lemonade that day, and Morgan and Anissa stopped to get some. At one point, they ended up walking 3 miles in the wrong direction. And it's now been 5 hours since they stabbed Payton, and Anissa was tired and asked Morgan if they could go home yet. So they ended up crossing a busy highway to get to an on-ramp, and someone saw them and thought they looked like the girls being broadcast on social media and the news, and they had walked 10 miles at this point. So Anissa laid down and said she wanted to call her mom and dad and go home, and Morgan told her if she did that, she would spend the rest of her life in prison or be executed. Suddenly, they heard sirens, and police drew their guns and told them to put their hands up. Morgan told an officer, "I was forced to kill my best friend." They then saw blood on Anissa and asked her if she needed help, and she said, "No, I'm scared." So Angie and Matt arrived at the police station thinking that one of the girls was hurt and Morgan had wandered too far from home. And like when they arrived, they were actually debating whether or not Morgan could still go to the Star Trek convention that they'd gotten her tickets for because they just had no idea what they were walking into.
Yeah.
And in Wisconsin, it is legal to interrogate children without a parent present unless the child specifically asks for an attorney, which obviously what child is going to.
What 12-year-old knows to ask for an attorney?
Exactly. So Matt and Angie weren't allowed to see Morgan, and it was perfectly legal because Wisconsin allows that. So it was decided that Detective Trusoni would interview Anissa and Detective Casey would interview Morgan. So neither had any experience interrogating children. Trusoni made small talk with Anissa, who was talking about her nail polish and how she was looking forward to her upcoming summer vacation. Again, just like proof of a 12-year-old brain that you're just like, how is that what you think is happening right now? Anissa told Trusoni that Morgan can be hard to talk to and that she hears voices. When Morgan's handcuffs were removed, she started like slapping at the air. She pretended to play the piano. She got up and walked around, like singing a lot. And Morgan was read her rights and signed a statement confirming that she understood her rights. So
What 12-year-old understands that?
Exactly. So 7 years before this, the American Bar Association said that juveniles are less competent to understand their rights and need more protections before being allowed to waive counsel because like it's like you signing your name on that is not a true understanding that you understand what's happening.
And also, like, when you're that young and there's like an authority figure telling you what to do, like, you're gonna do it, even if you don't
Yeah.
understand.
They're
Like,
like, okay, I'm going to read this to you, and then you're going to sign their name. And they're like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. Like, but Wisconsin, and I did not know this, is the only state that allows attorneys to practice law without passing the bar exam.
you don't have to take the bar exam.
Nope. So, this statement from the American Bar Association probably doesn't hold as much weight there because they're like, yeah, we don't care. We don't have to pass your exam to
What
practice
is
law
happening in
anyway.
Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Morgan nonchalantly answered questions about their morning and admitted that they stabbed Payton, just very casually talking about it. Very normal affect. She said Anissa told her they had to or he would kill their families. She said she didn't know who he was, but that Anissa did. They asked her where the knife had come from and how long they had been planning the attack. Morgan said she got it from her kitchen, and they've been planning the attack since December. And again, this is the end of May. So Anissa asked Detective Drusoni how far she walked, and she was like, "Oh, like I'm not very athletic. I just want to know." And it's very off-putting, bizarre. I don't know the right word, but like when you watch her interview, and they're like talking about like stabbing this girl, and then she's like, "I have a question," and they're like, "Okay." She's like, "How far did I walk? Like I'm just wondering because I'm not very athletic, so I just want to like know how far I walked today." Like
Yeah, and I
what?
think too, like with the whole story, and I know we get into it more later, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like Morgan clearly has untreated like mental
Yeah.
illness that's contributing to this. But like Anissa, it's like, and
Yeah.
then like her going along with all this, doing all this, and then they're walking to Slenderman's mansion, and she's like, I'm tired. Can we just go home?
Yeah.
Like you had this whole plan and you knew you had to walk 100 hours and you
Yeah.
walk half a day and you're like,
You walk
I'm
five
done.
hours. Yeah. Yeah,
It's crazy.
it really is. So Anissa was read her rights and she signed them as well. Trusoni asked her what happened, and Anissa started talking about the website Creepypasta. She explained who Slenderman was, some of the other characters, and said that they were trying to be Slenderman's proxies. She said it was Morgan's idea, but that she did agree to everything. She admitted that she told Morgan to stab her, and that she told Payton they were going to get her help, but they were really just running away to let her die. Just admits all of this in this interview. Morgan didn't answer the questions like with the same details that Anissa did, though, and her family would later find out that she had gaps in her memory from her undiagnosed and untreated schizophrenia, so she probably didn't remember as many details at that point as Anissa did. And at one point in the interview, Anissa asked where Peyton's body was, and the detective told her it was at the hospital, and she's just like, "Oh, like I thought it would still be there at the crime scene," and again, just very like nonchalant, like not concerned at all,
Yeah.
like, oh, I just thought it would still be there. And they told her that Peyton was alive, and Anissa said she was kind of happy but kind of worried because she was scared that Peyton would hate her guts, and she asked if she would be able to go back to school. So,
Again, and maybe it's just a 12-year-old not
yeah.
understanding the ramifications. Because, like, obviously, we know in the last episode we talked about she has conflicting statements about,
Hmm.
but I do think that could be said about kids young who play video games where people die because you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, if I die, I come right back.
Yeah.
Not saying that everyone who plays like a violent video game like
Yeah,
that
of course.
does stuff like this, but it's like at 12, it's like hard to fully comprehend
Hmm.
everything. Like you stab your friend and then you're like, I'm just really scared she's gonna be mad at me.
Yeah, which I feel like
Like,
all of this is very important in the context of should they have been tried as adults or not, because
yeah.
it's, and I get it. It's so hard because you're like, you planned this murder for 4 months.
Hmm.
You brutally attacked this girl. She was still alive when you left. It wasn't like a, oh shit, we fucked up. We got it. Like, you left her there to die. You walked for 5 hours thinking she's bleeding out this whole time. Like, all of these things. But then at the same time, your 12-year-old brain is like, oh, she's gonna be mad at me, like when we get back to school together. So it's like, how can you, it's
12,
really
12
hard.
feels too young.
Yeah.
12 to be tried as an adult.
It's
I
really
don't know.
hard.
It's a tough one. It's a tough
Yeah.
one.
So, but Anissa did admit to the detective that Slender Man is a work of fiction and is not real. So, like in this interview, right after she's saying, like, no, I know he's not real. Um, she also said, I didn't know what it would be like to watch someone bleed out. I never watched something die. I didn't exactly know how weird and scary it would be. I didn't know it would take so long. So Morgan also admitted that they were trying to kill Peyton. When she was told that she was alive, she did say good and like sounded relieved. However, when they asked Morgan like what she did after the girls left the bathroom, she just like made this stabbing motion and was like stab, 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 stabby, stab, stab. Just complete flat voice, no emotion. It was over an hour until Morgan mentioned Slender Man and said that they were walking to find him, which is kind of bizarre if you think about the fact that supposedly this whole thing was because of
About
Slender
Slender Man.
Man, and you
Yeah.
don't bring it up at all. She also said she felt no remorse and she felt nothing, that it was just like stabbing air. And she's like, I realized that remorse would get me nowhere. She also said that people who trust you become very gullible, and it's sad, like talking about how she was able to get Peyton into the woods. And Morgan said both she and Anissa stabbed Peyton. And the detective asked her who stabbed Peyton first, and she's like, how am I supposed to remember that? Like, it was either me or it was her. I don't know. How am I supposed to remember which one? But again, she later come out that she had gaps in her memory from this untreated schizophrenia. When the detective left the room, Morgan sang to herself, ate the skin off her toe, climbed on the chair, sat back down, smiled to herself, just very odd behaviors. So Peyton had multiple surgeries to repair her liver, pancreas, stomach, and heart, and a doctor said that one of her chest wounds was 1 millimeter away from killing her, and that Peyton was extremely lucky. Like he was like, if this knife had gone down the slightest bit more, she would be
Yeah.
gone.
I will say with this one, I thought she did die. I didn't
A
remember
lot of
that she
people did.
survived.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, I remember it being a stabbing and I just didn't remember
Hmm.
that she actually lived.
They talked about that a lot in the book, trying to clear up like misconceptions about this case because in the whole trying them as adults and all of these things. But that was one of the big misconceptions in the case was that this girl died and she didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So Morgan and Anissa were placed together in a police van. Morgan told Anissa to stop being serious. This is fun. This is just a game. And Anissa told her to stop talking to her. So now Anissa's like, no, I'm done with you.
Stop, 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 stop. Yeah.
So they were both booked in the Washington County Jail. And while they were being processed, Morgan like kept trying to hug Anissa, and Anissa was like pulling away. And after this moment, Anissa would not speak to Morgan for 6 years. And Morgan was isolated in jail due to her odd behaviors.
Hmm.
Matt and Angie were finally told that Morgan and Anissa had stabbed Payton. They asked to see Morgan, but the police wouldn't let them. So they reached out to a defense attorney named Tony Cotton. Angie's stepdad, Bob, took Cotton's $20,000 retainer fee from his police pension. So in Wisconsin, children as young as 10 years old were automatically prosecuted as adults in attempted homicide cases. And at this time, juveniles, and I don't know if this has changed. So I say at this time, but I don't know if this has changed or not. So it could still be currently. But juveniles in the adult system did not qualify for rehabilitative services until they were within 3 years of being released. So this meant that if Morgan and Anissa were convicted in adult court, they might not even be eligible to get a GED for decades, because it's like you get nothing until you're within 3 years of getting out. So you're convicted at 12
No.
years old, and then if you get out at 50, great, now you can have a GED and some kind of rehabilitative service at 47 after you've spent
Yeah.
decades in jail since the time you were 12 years old.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And being charged as an adult also meant they wouldn't qualify for a social worker or any of the other rehabilitative services that juveniles in juvenile jail would receive. So it's like you're convicting these 12-year-olds and expecting them to at some point rejoin society, but you're not going to give them any kind of services to assist them despite the majority of their brain development happening while in prison. So in jail, Morgan slept underneath her bunk. She ate underneath the cafeteria table while squatting and swaying back and forth. And Morgan's intake officer reported that Morgan needed a psych evaluation. So bail was set at $500,000 for both girls. And Morgan actually asked her parents not to post her bail, but like they couldn't afford to post it anyway. And the first time they visited her in jail, a few days after the bail hearing, they knew that she was showing signs of schizophrenia that they had missed. So, as we talked about before, the media went wild with this case, especially once it was reported that both girls were being charged as an adults. So the media was also using this case as an opportunity to say parents needed to be wary of what their kids were doing online, like blaming it on like Slenderman and creepypasta and these things other than like the mental illness that is what initiated this. Like they're basically being like, don't let your kids go wild online and stuff like this won't happen.
Yeah.
So Dr. Kenneth Robbins was the psychiatrist who met with Jeffrey Dahmer after his arrest, and he was called in to meet with Morgan. He could tell that she was hallucinating and thought that she was on the schizotypal spectrum. However, she needed to be evaluated in a hospital to receive a formal diagnosis. His job was to determine Morgan's competency. So he believed that she was not competent to stand trial for 2 reasons. So first, she believed her primary mission in court was to protect her and her family from Slenderman. So she's still believing that Slenderman is real. And second, she believed that she had Vulcan mind powers and could be wherever she wanted to be. So she didn't care if she was free or in prison because she's like, I can just close my eyes and be anywhere. It doesn't really matter to me where I'm at. So he's like, this person is not competent to stand trial for an attempted murder charge. She also spoke about her friend Voldemort and said that she saw and spoke to him every day unless he was on a business trip. So again, she's still having like these very clear hallucinations. She spoke about several other friends and hallucinations that she's having, like very actively in this schizophrenia diagnosis.
Yeah, and within days, the Leutners owed $250,000 in medical bills. So Peyton's dad, Joe, worked for a party planning company, and her mom, Stacy, worked in healthcare. So they started a GoFundMe page to help with medical bills, and they also started a Hearts for Healing Facebook page. They asked supporters to send paper hearts with messages on them for Peyton. And they also hired a local artist to paint a tree mural on Peyton's bedroom wall, and they hung the hearts like leaves on the branches, which is very sweet to kind of
Yeah,
help her because she's so young to be going through such
exactly.
surgeries and trauma.
Like
Like,
this such a traumatic experience, and like you have to remember like she's still like a baby. Like
yeah, she's still a baby. She had to go through months of extensive surgery, physical therapy, and follow-up appointments. And Peyton couldn't be in front of windows and couldn't use Morgan and Anissa's names. She had a long road to recovery ahead of her, and Peyton's family supported Morgan and Anissa being prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So Morgan's legal team searched her bedroom and found mutilated Barbie dolls, some with stab wounds and Slenderman symbol carvings. She had also made drawings of little girls covered in blood and holding knives. Morgan also had advanced psychology textbooks hidden in her room, and they wondered if she knew something was wrong with her, and she was trying to figure out what. Like, are they like, she's having these moments of clarity that, like, something's not right, so she's trying to figure out, like, what she's experiencing. A few weeks later, Anissa was placed on suicide watch after being bullied by other inmates, and she did not receive any mental health treatment after expressing suicidal ideation. On August 1st, 2014, doctors testified that Morgan was incompetent to stand trial and needed to be evaluated in a hospital setting so that she could begin treatment for schizophrenia. The judge ruled that Morgan would be remanded to Winnebago Mental Health Institute for up to 1 year or until she restored competency. However, the judge did not check the box to authorize the hospital to administer medication, so her schizophrenia would not be able to be medically treated, which is usually the most helpful treatment.
yes, exactly. It's very difficult to or impossible to manage schizophrenia without medication.
Yeah. So Governor Scott Walker declared August 13th Purple Hearts for Healing Day in honor of Peyton, and Peyton recovered enough to return to school in the fall for her seventh grade year. Morgan was the youngest patient at Winnebago, and doctors asked her how she would feel if she took drugs that made her hallucinations disappear, and she started to cry and said they weren't dangerous. Her quote friend, Maggie, was kind and helpful and had spoken to her during her interrogation and told her not to say anything. On October 22nd, doctors at Winnebago diagnosed Morgan with early onset childhood schizophrenia. Their focus at the hospital was on restoring Morgan to legal competency in order to stand trial, not in actually providing her with mental health treatment. So they're not like, we want you to have, like, you know, a better, like, your mental health to improve and to have a better, what's the term I'm looking for?
Like we don't want to not heal you because it's not something, but like treat you. We don't want to treat you. We don't want to
Have a better,
quality of life.
that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Yes.
That was it.
It's
They didn't
late,
want
guys.
that. They just wanted her to be able to stand trial,
Yeah.
basically. And she received no medication to treat her schizophrenia, and one doctor said he didn't want Morgan to be drowsy for her trial. So, Anissa showed remorse in jail and said she didn't know how she could do something like this. However, she still believed Slenderman was real. She started reading the Bible more and now thought Slenderman was a demon. She started to make friends in jail, and after about 6 months in Winnebago, Morgan was declared competent to stand trial and was sent back to jail until her trial. She was still not administered antipsychotic medication, and because Anissa now had friends in jail, they all blamed Morgan for what had happened and wouldn't speak to Morgan once she was transferred back to jail. So Anissa basically turned everyone against Morgan.
Hmm.
Morgan was angry with her dad for hiding his schizophrenia from her, and both defense teams prepared reverse waivers to petition to have the girls tried as juveniles and not adults. On May 26th, the judge heard Anissa's defense present the waiver, and they presented that the girls had more of a possibility of transformation and rehabilitation because their brains weren't fully formed yet, and that prosecuting juveniles as adults only increased recidivism rates, which is true because, like we said, they can't continue to go to school. Like, they're just in this new environment. Like,
Exactly. Like no one is working to like help them get out and become productive members of society.
mhm. So they had to prove that trying Anissa and Morgan as juveniles wouldn't deter other juveniles from committing crimes, but they presented research that most juveniles don't think ahead to prosecution when deciding to commit crimes. So
Which
the
makes a lot of
prosecution,
sense when you think about like
yeah.
how juveniles think. It's like that's not really, I mean, maybe for adults, like that's a deciding factor, which I think they've even proven with like death penalty and stuff that like it's really not, like it doesn't deter
Hmm.
people. But like especially for juveniles, they're not thinking about like what if they're going to be prosecuted as a juvenile or an adult or like what happened in this other case, but that's not how kids think.
It's it's even hard in middle and high school, like when people are being bullied and having a really hard time, for them to even ever think life will be better. And I think that's
Yeah.
sometimes why we see middle and high school students who will die by suicide, because they don't have like the frontal lobe development to be like, life will continue and be better
Hmm.
one day. Like that's to them, like their current reality is just what they think the rest of their life will be.
Yeah, exactly.
So the prosecution tried to point to Anissa's high IQ as a reason to try her as an adult, but her defense team argued that she had lower scores on processing speed, meaning she struggled with analytical skills. Morgan's defense team struggled with how much to focus on her schizophrenia in her reverse waiver hearing. While they wanted to highlight her mental illness as a reason for the assault, they also worried it might indicate that Morgan couldn't be rehabilitated. Juvenile parole would also allow for more restrictions for Morgan once released, such as mandatory medication, while adult parole would not allow for that. The judge ruled that adult prisons are overcrowded and they don't have enough resources for any of their inmates, and that Morgan and Anissa shouldn't receive special treatment. He said their crime was frankly vicious and ruled that their case would stay in adult court. So,
Like he was basically like, yeah, like we can't support any of our inmates. They're not special, but they're still 12.
12. Yeah. Yeah. So Morgan's attorney needed another $100,000 to continue defending Morgan, and her grandfather took it out of his police pension again. Angie also learned that juvenile jails could charge parents child support, and she now owed the Washington County Jail $150,000. Like, what? What?
Which I mean, I guess it
I've
makes
never
sense
heard of
because it's like, oh,
that.
like you are responsible for raising your child. If like the
Yeah.
state is raising your child, well, now you have to pay child support.
But then it makes you be like, okay, well, if your kid gets taken away from you and is put in foster care, do you have to pay child support to the foster care system? Wouldn't that be similar? Because someone else is
Yeah,
having
I'm
to then
trying to
take care of your
think
kid.
because I think they do sometimes. Like, I
Mm.
think the biggest time is that a lot of times, I think the I think the biggest thing that happens when they don't is because like there's no money to take, so there's
Yeah.
nothing to pay. But I'm pretty sure they are supposed to.
Hmm.
It probably depends on like state to state and circumstances and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they do have to or
Crazy.
are supposed
I
to if they have it.
I've never experienced any of this, so not really sure. Um, so 19 months after her arrest, Morgan's defense team won a Chapter 51 order that sent her back to Winnebago to start on antipsychotics. She started to show improvement after 2 months of medication, and Morgan finally felt remorse for what she did. She still mourned her, quote, friends as her hallucinations started to disappear. And after 3 months of being medicated at Winnebago, she was sent back to a jail with a prescription for antipsychotic medication. In April of 2016, bail reduction was denied for both girls, and both girls were put on suicide watch after that. Morgan actually attempted to die by suicide and was sent back to Winnebago, where they added antidepressants to her medication. Anissa was doing well in jail and was praised by her teachers, and the other inmates looked up to her. Court appointed psychologists diagnosed Anissa with folie à deux, which is the madness of two, in which a mentally healthy person develops the mental illness of someone close to them. So they're saying Anissa developed Morgan's schizophrenic symptoms. On September 12th, 2017, Anissa's trial started, and the judge did not sequester the jury. Her defense team started by presenting information about the juvenile brain and how impulse control and decision making abilities aren't fully formed until at least the age of 25, and she's less than half that. Um, and to present the folie à deux defense, they had to prove that Morgan's schizophrenia predated the crime. So the detective who interviewed Morgan the day of the stabbing said she did not show any signs of schizophrenia at that time, and the prosecution argued that the planning and premeditation that went into this crime would heavily weigh heavily on the outcome. So Anissa was found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect, and she would now join Morgan at Winnebago. On September 26, 2017, Morgan went to court and pled guilty in exchange for a not guilty by reason of insanity verdict. So this meant she would remain at Winnebago for an undetermined amount of time. So she could petition to be released every 6 months, and if released, she would have no criminal record. So Payton's family agreed to this plea so that Payton would not have to testify at court. However, the judge still had to accept the plea. Not guilty by reason of insanity verdicts usually result in longer imprisonments than a criminal sentence would. And a 1983 study found that defendants were usually sentenced to mental hospitals for twice as long as they would have been sentenced to prison if convicted of the same offense. So when it came time for the judge to rule on the plea deal, he wanted Morgan to explain exactly what happened to Payton, and he had her restart over and over and tell the story several times. And then finally, he accepted the plea deal. Morgan's psychiatrists were prepared to testify that she was no longer a threat to herself or anyone else, and that they couldn't provide any treatment beyond medication. They said Morgan was doing well on medication, but wasn't receiving any schooling or other services, and there wasn't much more they could do for her. An Anissa sentencing hearing was scheduled for December 21st, 2017, and her family and attorney had agreed to wait 3 years before petitioning for release, even though the law would allow them to petition for release in 6 months, and they thought this would appease the judge, but he sentenced her to 25 years anyway. So he was like, no, we're
He
good.
was not having any leniency here.
Yeah. So Morgan's sentencing hearing was scheduled for February 1st, 2018. A psychiatrist who met with Morgan 3 months before the hearing testified that she should remain locked up, and the prosecution presented her high IQ of 129 as proof that she was capable of lying and trickery. Other psychiatrists countered that her cognitive function had diminished with the antipsychotics, and the judge sentenced Morgan to remain at Winnebago for 40 years, which is the maximum sentence for someone found not guilty for reason of insanity for attempted murder. So, again, no leniency with her either. Winnebago wanted to keep Morgan and Anissa away from each other, but there was only cafeteria. Oh, nope, that sounded weird. There was only cafeteria. There was only beach.
There was only cafeteria.
Everyone is staying in a large cafeteria. Oof.
They have no rooms. It's
No
just
rooms.
cafeteria. Everyone's just there 24/7.
Oh. Winnebago wanted to keep Morgan and Anissa away from each other, but there was only one cafeteria. So they switched off every 30 days, like who ate in the cafeteria and who ate in their room. In October 2019, Payton spoke with 2020 for their episode about this case. She was 17 years old, and that was the first time she spoke publicly about it. She said she goes by Payton now and reported that she sleeps with a pair of broken scissors under her pillowcase just in case. She has a small group of friends that she trusts, but she said trust is still hard for her and something she's working on. She said the little girl who was kind to everyone died the day Morgan stabbed her. The interviewer asked Payton what she would say to Morgan if Morgan was listening to the interview, and Payton said she would thank her because she has the life she has now and is the person she is now because of what Morgan did, and she loves her life and the person she is. She's a stronger person now. Morgan wrote Payton an apology letter, and after reading it, Payton said it was a nice letter, but it was just words on paper. And Payton acknowledged that Morgan is sick and needs help. And she also said when she found out the reason Morgan stabbed her was because of Slenderman, she was not surprised because she knew Morgan believed so strongly in Slenderman. So both Payton and her mom said they feel for Morgan and Anissa's parents and what they've gone through. And Payton said Morgan is schizophrenic and there's nothing her mom could have done to prevent this because she's like, I mean, it is what it is, really.
Yeah, and to be 17 years old and to have gone through what you went through and to be able to have that mindset is just incredible.
Mhm.
Like,
to be like, thank you for this because now I'm the person who I am today because of that. Like,
Hmm.
that's more maturity than we see in
Right.
grown adults.
And to also like be thinking about like how Morgan and Anissa's parents are struggling in this time when it's like obviously this is about you. Like you were the one who went through like this
Hmm.
very traumatic experience and assault, and you're also able to think about like your attackers' families and how it's
Hmm.
difficult for them, and to have that perspective at such a young age like is amazing.
Yeah. So Peyton graduated high school in July of 2020 and received an academic scholarship to the University of Wisconsin Parkside to study medicine, and she was inspired by her experience with her medical team during her surgeries and recovery. When Morgan and Anissa turned 18, they were allowed to be in contact with each other at Winnebago. They didn't talk to each other, but they would smile in the hallways. And on November 10th, 2020, Anissa submitted her first petition for release. In March of 2021, a few months before the scheduled hearing, Peyton's mom took a letter Peyton had written to the judge explaining her impressions of the case and her recommendations. The letter has been sealed to the public. Anissa wrote to the court that she's not done with treatment, but she's exhausted all resources available at Winnebago and needs to be a part of society if she is to eventually become a productive member of society in the future. The judge granted her petition for conditional release. She is required to live with her father and cannot access the internet outside of her home. And her internet activity is monitored by the Department of Corrections. And she's also monitored by GPS 24/7 and is mandated to continue psychiatric treatment. Morgan started having new hallucinations at Winnebago. She called one of them her fiance and believed they got married, and then he disappeared to the underworld. She was put on suicide watch because she believed she had to die to go to the underworld to find him. She remains angry at her parents for hiding Matt's mental illness and for her mom working so much and leaving her alone with a man with untreated schizophrenia. She was also angry that they didn't believe her when she told them about the symptoms she was having. And when Morgan's lawyer contacted her to discuss her first petition for release, Morgan said she didn't want to be released and was comfortable at Winnebago. So she's like, I'm okay here. No, thank
Yeah.
you.
She was like, no thanks.
Morgan did submit a petition for release in 2024, and it was denied on April 21st after two court appointed psychiatrists recommended that she remain in psychiatric care. And that is the really sad attempted murder of Payton Leutner.
Yeah, like what a case. Like you said, I know everyone remembers this when it was in the news
Hmm.
10 years ago now. And a lot of people thought that Peyton did die. A lot of people just talked about how evil Morgan and Anissa were. And it's just, I feel like there's just so many nuances to this case that it's not that simple to just say, like, oh,
Hmm.
they were just two evil girls. And it is wild to me that, like, which I guess that comes into like Anissa's diagnosis of kind of acquiring like Morgan's schizophrenic symptoms, but that two people did it because it's like between the
Yeah.
two of y'all, neither one of you at any point, and they were very hesitant to do it. Like we talked about it a little bit, but the book went like very in detail about like every time that they like kind of backed away from doing it when they planned on it and kept extending it and stuff like that. So it's like they had those hesitations, but then didn't follow through on, oh, maybe we should stop this. Like
Yeah.
it's just such a wild, like,
It's so many layers where you're like,
yeah,
they were 12, but they also tried to plan it, but also they're children, but also mental illness, but also like
yeah. Because
so many
obviously
layers.
Morgan's schizophrenic diagnosis plays a huge role in this. And also want to
Hmm.
say that most people who have a diagnosis of schizophrenia are not violent. Like that's not
Yeah.
typical of that mental illness. It's not, something that commonly happens, but in this case, her schizophrenia played a role in what happened. And I think everyone acknowledges that. But then you still have both
You have
girls being tried as
Anissa
adults.
who, doesn't really like who should have kind of been the one being like, maybe we shouldn't do that, and
Yeah.
still heavily played into it and almost kind of like pushed it along a
Hmm.
lot too. Like, I don't believe if it was like Morgan on her own, that she
Yeah.
necessarily, and I don't know if I believe if it was Anissa on her own, if it would have
Yeah.
happened. It's like this terrible combination of
Hmm.
these two together that like caused this to happen,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
that's and Peyton said that in her interview as well, that she was like, I think it was the two of them together that led to this, that it wouldn't have happened otherwise. Which I also feel like highlights the fact that they were only 12, and that when you're 12,
Hmm.
you do stupid shit, which obviously most of us don't do stupid shit like trying to kill someone, because that takes it to a whole other level, which again makes it so complicated, because you're like, oh, like adult crime, adult trial. Like, but then the things that you, all of the details in this case, you're like, but everything that happened just proves how underdeveloped their brain is, that this is like,
Hmm.
that you could be sucked into something like that so easily. But I also understand people that are like, you literally stabbed someone 19 times and
Yeah.
left her to die. Like, that's not what a 12-year-old does either. So
And it's also like, and I don't want to be that person who like is like, but this, but like how many times Morgan was failed? Like she was
mhm.
12.
Yeah.
She doesn't, she's 12 dealing with the onset of a very serious like mental illness that needs
Hmm.
treatment and medication and managing, and is hard for adults who have it,
Yeah.
who've had it for years to manage sometimes.
Hmm.
So it's like if she'd had someone in her life who noticed this and was like, let's get help, let's talk about this, let's do that, like would this have not happened? Because
Yeah.
like they were just letting her mental illness be untreated, and then she's
Hmm.
also introduced to this friend who's then kind of also ramping it up, you know,
Yeah.
like
And for Morgan to start having these symptoms at 3 years old, like to be
yeah.
diagnosed with schizophrenia as a child is usually a much worse illness than if you're diagnosed as an adult, because typically schizophrenia onset is like late teen years, like early 20s. Like that's usually when someone develops this illness. So for someone to have these symptoms as a child, like childhood schizophrenia is usually much worse than adult schizophrenia.
Yeah, and there was just like so many like people and like times in her life that's like how did no one just like help this poor girl who like didn't know how to handle this, or that
Yeah.
this wasn't, you know, what other children experience. Like other children didn't have
Hmm.
hallucinations or color, you know, none of that. It's just
Yeah.
it's complicated.
It is. It's a very difficult, like there's a lot of gray in this case, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And I couldn't find anything on Peyton since 2020. I think one article said as of like 2022, like she was in college and working a part-time job, but really couldn't
Hmm.
find any
I'm
details
sure
after
she wants
that.
to just be like, I'm gonna live my
Exactly.
life. Please leave me alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure she doesn't want to just be known as like the girl that was stabbed, like
Hmm.
because of Slender Man, or to appease Slender Man, or whatever. Like I'm sure she wants to go on and live her life and be known for things that she does, which it sounds like she's going to do incredible
Hmm.
things. So yeah, so that was this two-parter. I did So we referenced it at the beginning of episode 1. Again, that was Slender Man, Online Obsession, Mental Illness, and the Violent Crime of Two Midwest Girls by Kathleen Hall. I did really enjoy the book. However, it's very clearly favoring the defendants, which I
Hmm.
understand the points that she's trying to make. I understand that she's trying to discuss their home lives, their mental illness, like the trial and how everything, their treatment that wasn't really treatment at the mental hospital, like all of those things, but it doesn't talk about Peyton very much. And Peyton refused to be interviewed for the book, which I completely understand. So I
Hmm.
understand that the author also is working with limited information, but just kind of wanted to put that disclaimer out there that if you read the book, just kind of know that I did enjoy it. I felt like it was very informative, but it needs some supplemental information if you're going to
Yeah.
get a full picture of this case and more information about the victim. So
Yeah.
that being said, Courtney, what's your perk of the week?
So do you think I can say it? You think it's like clear enough now that I can like say it, right? I'll
Oh,
say it.
I
I'll
think so,
say
but
it.
I'm also scared because we've done preemptive perks of the week
Yeah.
before.
Okay, come back next week for my perk of the week. Now I gotta scramble and think of something else.
You
Um,
want me to leave all that in there?
yeah, you can leave
Okay,
that in.
perfect.
Because I've been
Little
so
cliffhanger
torn
for
about
next week's.
whether I should say it or not because I'm scared.
Yeah.
Let's see. So my perk of the week is last week in my perk of the week, I mentioned I went to the beach and then I read 4 books,
Hmm.
and 3 of them were a part of a series that I got for Christmas, and I've been so excited to read, and they did not disappoint. I really enjoyed them. It was the Dreamland Billionaires series.
Hmm.
So they're all like romance books. So if you hate romance books, I mean, obviously don't read them, but I really liked them. It's like
Hmm.
three brothers who were like left this inheritance from their grandfather, but they have like stipulations they have to follow in order to get
Hmm.
it, and family dynamics. A lot of people I read like reviews who didn't like it were like, I can't empathize with billionaires, which like I get, but like
Yeah.
I still liked it. Like they're still fucked up. Like rich
Yeah.
people are still fucked up too. Like
Rich people have problems too.
we need a guy to meet a girl and change. We just love it. We do.
Yes.
It feeds that part in women that thinks they can fix a man, but you
Just
can't
no, just get that fix from your fiction and not
from your
from
reading.
your real life boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yes.
But exactly. But I really enjoyed reading it. I thought it was a perfect
Nice.
beach read. It was just light and it was fun. It was like nice to read. So I
Hmm.
really enjoyed it. Some people don't like it. Reading is, some people aren't going to love the same books, but
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
And
So
sometimes you just need those like lighter books
yeah.
that aren't, especially with this hobby of ours where we read
Yes.
so many deep things and so many traumatic stories. And sometimes you just need something good
I,
and lighthearted to.
it's like I know how this is going to end, and I do not care that I know how
Mhm.
this is going to end.
I'm still gonna enjoy the ride.
I'm going to enjoy the journey to get there. I'm
Exactly.
gonna enjoy it. I know they're gonna get together and then there's gonna be a fight and they're gonna get back together and there's gonna be a fight and then they're gonna be
Hmm.
together. I know that. I don't know what the fight's about though.
I don't
You
know how it
never
gets
know.
resolved. I'll have to figure that out.
What if it's a surprise twist and they don't get together? You never know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
could be.
but I just really enjoyed it. It was a nice little beach read. So
Hmm.
that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that in the last like week or two, my hummingbirds have just been. Courtney went to
I
take a
had to
drink
put
and
my
was
drink
like,
down.
she's like, I can't with your nonsense. They've just been very present and just
Hmm.
bringing me so much joy. So I have three specifically that I can differentiate between. There may be some that like look the same that there may be more than three, but I know there's at least three different ones.
Yeah.
But I have my hummingbird feeder on like my back deck. But my coworker Sarah sent me a wildflower like seed mixture that's supposed to like attract hummingbirds. So we
Hmm.
planted those out front and out back. The ones out back aren't doing as well. I don't think they get enough sun. But the ones out back in my front yard are like literally taller than Millie. Like they are so tall. Like they are huge
Yeah.
and they're beautiful and they're like all different colors. Like there's I love this. I'm gonna have to find that specific
Hmm.
wildflower mixture to be my perk of the week at some point. But I just love this like wildflower thing. And now I see the hummingbirds at the flowers. So I can see my hummingbirds in the
Nice.
front and the back. Like yesterday I was on a work call that like someone called me on my cell phone. So I was just kind of like walking around my house and I was like looking out the window and I watched this hummingbird for no lie, like 5 minutes straight. And she just went around to
You had
all of
no
my
idea what the
flowers.
phone call was about. No idea.
Right? Like what did we talk about? I don't know. Don't ask me later. And she just flew around to all of the different flowers and she just eating off of them and going to the next one
I
and
haven't heard.
it's
So have you
delightful.
named them, the ones you can differentiate between?
No, but I probably should, huh?
You
We should
should,
probably
yeah.
name them. Okay. I'm gonna think of a good
Yeah.
trio name so they can.
Ed, Ed, and Eddie. So that way, if you're getting it wrong, you're
Close
there.
enough. Perfect.
Wait, Merly. Curly, wait, what is it? Curly, Mo. Wait, what are they? What's the third one? It's not Merly. Stu? No.
What is the third one?
The third one.
Curly Mo and
I thought it rhymed.
hold on, we gotta look it up.
Larry.
Larry. Marley.
Merly. I said it like 4 times. Oh, man.
Oh boy. Well,
Merly, Curly, and Lurly.
I mean, one's definitely going to be named Merlin now.
Merly, it has to be. Oh, God.
Oh, man.
If you can tell, it's late and we need to go to bed.
Yeah. On that note, tell us about your romance books, your beach reads, your hummingbirds. Send me pictures of your hummingbirds. I would love to see them. If you guys want to see a picture of my wildflowers, let me know because I love them. I don't even know what we talk about at this point. We are on all the places, all the things. It's in the show notes. You can find us there. We are also on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes. Again, these two-parters, you always get both parts at once. Last week you got all 3 of those. Nope, 2 weeks ago, whenever we came out with that series, you got all 3 of them at once. What else do we do on Patreon? We also have bonus episodes every month.
Bonus episodes. Yeah, and smack dab in the middle of your 3-part Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, you also got a bonus. You've never been so sick of us.
You're like, I'm not even listening to this episode right now because y'all are, I'm done. But yeah, we have a good old time over there. So come join us.
It's fun. And if you could give us 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, wherever you can give us a rating system, 5 stars. I already said that. Like and subscribe on YouTube. I don't know. Silly goofy moods, just comment silly goofy mood on this video. That's the real ones will know.
Oh God.
Anyway, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime. Oh wait, I'm recording.